Okay, we're ready to get started. Thank you everyone for attending today. This is the Facilis Technology presentation. Facilis Technology provides shared storage for collaborative media and content creators. We've been doing this for many years. Some of you have heard of us. You may have solutions, but we're going to talk about a few new things today. So I'll get right into it. My name is Shane Rodbourn. I'm the Chief Operating Officer. I've been here almost 15 years, and my colleague James McKenna has been here since the beginning of the company, was formed over 20 years ago. We have over 100 channel partners and over 4,000 systems worldwide deployed, and DVG has been a great partner for us. We really want to thank them for allowing us to present to their customers and to be here today. Our systems come from the US. They're all US assembled and shipped from the US. That's kind of a differentiator for us. We're a privately held company that's in the Boston area and also Beaverton in Oregon. We're really focused on engineering and value add. So that's really what we've stayed core to that principle. Facilis, the etymology of the word really is Latin. It means easy to work with or easy to do. And we have tried to stay to that principle. There's a lot of complexity under the covers of our system, the hardware and the software. We sell turnkey appliances, but to the end user, we try to keep things simple. These are just a few of the customers that we have today. You may recognize some of them. These are all DVG customers, and like I said, we sell globally, worldwide, but DVG has done an incredible job over the years helping us spec out systems, putting them in, and having customers be successful. So a lot of these customers have purchased systems and then reinvested again over the years and are running the latest and greatest. Some of the value add solutions and workflows for creative applications include your standard Avid Media Composer. From day one, we had Avid Media Composer, shared bins and projects. Bin locking, we had that capability from day one. We now have full integration with Adobe Premiere, with our Facilis Asset Management solution and our panel. We also still have Final Cut Pro. Some people are still using it. And now we have DaVinci Resolve integration, as well as NewTek. This is just a small list of them. There's many other third-party tools that we work with and partner with. Some of the unique and powerful workflow features that we offer include our shared file system. Like I said, we sell turnkey systems, so we sell hardware and software together, but at the end of the day, we really are a software company, and our shared file system is a differentiator. There's a piece of software that sits on the server as well as the client that allows us to control permissions, allows us to control performance, and to have different security levels. So that really is a huge thing for us that a standard NAS would not have. We have our WAN link remote access. Also, our Fast Tracker asset management solution, which has been very well adopted. It started out as just kind of a window into your Facilis environment, but now it can see all assets on the network, and you can index those assets and track them. You can do all kinds of workflow automation, create proxies, do tagging, lots of different things. Jim will go into some of those details. Smart access rules, we talked a little bit about today with some of our customers that didn't even know about it. It's the ability to get very granular on permissioning on your system. We used to just have volume level permissioning. Now we have down to the file and folder level. So that's really something that people are taking advantage of. And then finally, FASTCache is our new feature that we're going to talk about today. And that's really helping people overcome the obstacles and limitations of lower speeds connections over the internet or even on your LAN. So Jim's going to talk a little bit more in detail about that. So with that, I will introduce Jim McKenna, and he'll talk more about FASTCache.
Thanks, Shane. So as you saw, we're in the storage for post-production business. Content creators, graphics, anyone who's building content for the purposes of either marketing or broadcast of content that they own or that they're building for other people. That's really what we sell systems for. And so that workflow and those types of facilities have evolved over the years, and especially since the pandemic. I think a lot of our customers went away from the pandemic or got through the pandemic by use of things like cloud and sending hard drives home and maybe remote access and desktop sharing and things like that. So what we ended up with was this sort of conglomeration of different workflows and different methods of sharing that gave people access to remote assets and gave people the ability to stay home when in a time you had to stay home. So I'm just going to play a short video here, and this video will describe a bit, and it's also available on our website for later, what FASTCache is. So hopefully this comes up properly.
Hello there. Welcome to this
Do I have
Facilis
audio?
Technology video.
I don't have audio.
Let's get right into FASTCache, the new remote editorial feature
Start
that
over here
gives
real
you
quick.
full.
Should have warned you about that, Walter.
Hello there. Welcome to this Facilis Technology video. Let's get right into FASTCache, the new remote editorial feature that gives you full bandwidth to files that you're accessing over the internet. First, let's talk about where this feature is designed to work. The most obvious benefit is for editors and artists that work from home and have their workstations set up at home. These workstations can be connected to the Facilis Hub server through a VPN, or better yet, through the Facilis One link. Please check out our One link video if you're not familiar with that feature. Even with the optimized One link access, the remote connection may be too slow for consistent streaming of high bitrate video. This will result in drop frames and overall sluggishness of the application. The fix for this is to cache the data locally. When you cache data, it's just saving the bits of data you've already read. So the next time you read it, you're using the fast local data instead of the slower server data. This speeds up your playback and rids the system of that sluggish behavior. Here's an example of how it looks on your remote workstation. The Hub Client console has settings for finding the on-prem server and making sure encryption is enabled. It also has the FASTCache settings, where the feature is enabled and set to cache to a local drive. I mount the volume from my server, which is several miles away from my remote workstation. You'll see there's also an SSD icon on the desktop. That's the local drive I'm using for FASTCache. Let's open up Adobe Premiere and import some files. Normally, it would take a long time to even display the directory contents from miles away, but because of One link, it's very fast indeed. The files are imported, and I can load them into the timeline. By the way, this is UHD ProRes HQ video at over 700 megabits per second. There's no way this can play real time over my internet connection. But look at that. Snappy response, no dropped frames. The application thinks it's reading from the server, but it's really reading from the FASTCache SSD. To get this working the first time through, I pre-cached this project before starting. Otherwise, I could just play through the timeline at least once to get it cached for real-time performance. Now, take a look at what happens when I turn off the cache. The cache is meant to help with playback, but without it, the editor still has access to all the same files. I'll just remount the volume with the cache disabled and go back to the same timeline. Everything is still online, but now it's streaming directly from the server at the facility. Because of this, the video starts to drop frames after a couple seconds. The One link connection is trying its best to keep up, pulling 40 to 50 megabytes per second through the internet. But it's just not enough for this high-quality footage. Let's turn the cache back on so we can get some work done. The cache is non-volatile. It will all still be there after you reboot, and you can even carry the cache drive to another workstation or pre-cache data in the facility and send it off to a remote editor. As long as you can mount the volume, the cache contents are available. There we go. 0 dropped frames. The SSD drive can handle anything you throw at it, all the way up to uncompressed 4K. The network activity has stopped. Even though Adobe thinks it's still using the mounted Facilis volume, only local disk activity is showing. In this workflow, the editor is never on an island. The project is shared, The video and audio files are shared, and any new files are immediately accessible. All outputs and renders are immediately on the server and being shared at the facility and among other remote editors. For you, FASTCache may be a new way to work or an improvement to the way you're already working. One thing is certain, it's a unique and powerful tool that simplifies hybrid on-prem and remote workflows. Talk to the people at Facilis Technology about it as soon as you can. Have a great day.
Thank you. We'll have a great day. So as you can see, you know, it's targeted around remote access, but that's certainly not the only place where this is going to be beneficial, and we'll get into that in a moment. So the first thing I'll do here is figure out how to do that. There you go. Every client workstation is compatible. This means that if you have a Mac Studio, you have a Thunderbolt. If you have a laptop, you probably have a USB-C or USB 3 connection. If you have a tower, you certainly have either of those, or you could even have a card put in for Thunderbolt or USB-C. Any of these can take, or of course the tower system could take an internal NVMe as well, or even your laptop can take an internal NVMe. So all of these different applications, all of these different workstations are compatible. And when workstations have this caching drive on board, either attached or internal, there's multiple benefits here. So the higher bitrate workflow, of course, I mentioned, that's number one, where I just can't play the stuff back reliably off of my low bitrate connection, whether it be from home or in the facility on a Wi-Fi connection. Any of those situations, I'm going to get a higher bitrate workflow with FASTCache on my system. Lower server load is also very important, and it's how we benefit the on-prem systems as well. Because we all know that sometimes at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, if everyone's hitting it hard and there's deadlines at play, the server bogs down a little bit, right? And there's no way to really test that out in the lab and say who's hitting it how and with what, and who starts a copy or a transcode at the same time I'm trying to do an output. You know, that's something you can't test out, and there's things that'll happen that are just sort of chaotic. What FASTCache will do is it will lower the server and the network load considerably because you're caching all that data locally that you normally would be hitting the server for over and over again. As you can see, remote internet, I think, is the first, number one method of benefit for this. Second is going to be LAN, Wi-Fi, or LAN 1 gigabit. We have lots of corporate customers who can't get 10 gig to the workstation simply because the wiring in the walls is old Cat 5e, and if they need any more than that, they have to run glass, and it's just not happening. So they're stuck with 1 gig. Put a cache drive on your systems, and that 1 gig connection doesn't really matter anymore, because as soon as you slog through the timeline once, it caches, and you're playing off of thousands of megabytes per second off of Thunderbolt or USB-C. Of course, LAN 10 gigabit. Some people, like I said, in the middle of the afternoon on a really tough week, you might get some bogged down on the server. Throw some cache drives around. Inexpensive way to lower the network overhead and lower the server load entirely. So, 3 different ways, really, to work with this. Pre-caching before you start working, that's the method that you saw on the video, where I loaded the timeline up immediately and it started to play. Well, that means I've either played it before or I pre-cached it prior. Pre-caching just means that I've read it before I needed to read it, right? So I'm going to read it just by virtue of hitting all the files, and we have a tool that does this, and when that's done, you walk away and come back. Now all the stuff is online, ready for you to use. Now, if you have a slow connection, the files are really huge, it might take a long time to pre-cache. So you can just start working and cache on the fly. This is a more efficient way to go because it only caches the part of the file that you're working with. So if you have a timeline that's cut up, among 40 or 50 different clips, and the clips are all 1 hour in duration, but the timeline's only 5 minutes, you can understand why you wouldn't want to pre-cache everything first, right? You might just want to go through the timeline, cache everything as you go. Those portions, whatever you've read of those files, are now in the cache, and the rest of them are not. And the cache, and I keep talking about this cache drive and these cache files, it's one big blob of data. We don't keep video files on the cache drive, which means you can't walk away with the cache drive and use it someplace else, which means that if you cache at work or cache for someone, So you're caching on your system. Basically, you're just reading all the data while caching is enabled on your system, and send that drive to somebody else. If someone intercepts that on the way and plugs it into a system, they're not going to see anything. There will be no useful data at all on that cache drive for them. It's only when it's plugged into the workstation at home and you mount the volume via VPN or WAN link that you get to expose that cache to the operating system. The application can then use it, and the operating system can then use it. So it's a secure method of doing the old send a hard drive to somebody. When you send a hard drive to somebody with all the project data on it, that hard drive is now out there in the world. Anyone can go see that, right? Send a cache drive to someone, it's only the person that can hook into the server that gets to use that data. So the cache at work can take it home, cache for somebody else, send it off to an editor. And it doesn't mean that what you've cached and what you've actually copied in or cached into this drive is the only usable part of the project, because something else comes in next week and you have 10 or 20, 30 gigabytes more data to load up to the cache. They can do that at home. Since they have access to the server, it's all available to them. In the interest of a lot of folks who have sort of hangovers from the cloud era after the pandemic, when everyone just said, okay, put everything in the cloud and we'll deal with it later. As long as everyone can have access to it, we're good. Until they started to see the bills coming in every month. And they started to find out that they're at the mercy of their cloud service provider, cloud storage service provider. We want to be able to bring people back from that. You want to own the storage, you don't want to rent it. You want to have more flexible project schedules so that if you're spending all this money on cloud storage and the guy comes to you, the lady or the production comes to you and says, I got to push this off 3 months. We're on sabbatical, but we'll be back in 3 months. Well, what do? Do you egress everything from the cloud and pay that cost just so you can put it back up again in 3 months? Or do you leave it there and pay monthly for all the space you're using and not actually using? You own that storage, it's in your facility, you can decide what to do with it without any extra cost. This enables true hybrid project collaboration, right? So if I'm on my Adobe Premiere project at work and somebody else is at home and they're working off of a cloud copy, you upload, you download, it's there, or they synchronize to the home workspace on a hard drive, you're not using the same project file anymore. Those are different project files. You can't open them both at the same time and collaborate on that project file. So this is giving you a way to have that true hybrid project collaboration, some people in the facility and some people at home, and they're both working on the same projects and the same files all at the same time. And it's security that you know and you trust from a company that's been doing this for a long time. We have multi-level encryption. We have layers of authentication on the workstations so that the administrator has to allow the workstations to get into the server. So the first time a workstation comes in through WAN link, nothing can happen until the administrator selects that workstation and authorizes it for internet use. That's only the first layer. It's encrypted, it has a user account, so all of these things, user and passwords, all of these things are increasing the security of the system, and make sure that even though we have to forward a port into the server, that we're not exposing ourselves to those normal risks. And I mentioned, WAN link is something we've had since 8.2, which is about 2 years old now. And WAN link is just, first off, the reason that FASTCache came about is because WAN link became extremely popular. And then people said, well, WAN link is great until, my kids come home and start surfing on YouTube or getting on Netflix. And then, I could really use the stuff to be local. So, I've copied some files down just to protect myself against those slow spots. And we said, well, hey, listen, if we had caching, we could get over this. But WAN link, to start, is simply remote access without VPN. You mentioned WAN link a few times here. I just want to be sure everyone knows what it is. WAN link is our method of access to the server without a VPN. So a VPN, virtual private network, you can get into the network by tunneling in. You have credentials and passwords and software and everything gets you in. WAN link is simply target the public IP address of the router, port forward to the server, and the communication happens between your client software on your home workstation and the server, the same as it would if you were in the facility. Same exact communication between server and client. And in doing this, we get rid of that tunnel latency with VPN. We get rid of all the VPN overhead. And now we just have the WAN link connectivity, and it's that much faster. It's AES encrypted, It has multi-level security, removes the VPN tunnel latency, and it's tested all the way up to full 1 gigabit speeds. And full 1 gigabit speeds meaning I can push data from Massachusetts to our colo facility in California at 100 megabytes per second over the WAN link connection. Not everyone gets that, and some people have seen various speeds based upon their ISPs and how well they're working with other ISPs that control different parts of the internet as a whole. But it's there, and the speed's there, and it's capable of that speed. So something to consider before you ever think about remote access with FASTCache is, what about WAN link? WAN link for some people will get you most of the way there, especially with our Fast Tracker asset management system, as Shane mentioned. The Fast Tracker asset management system creates proxies, enables you to create a low bitrate version of everything you have, and that's the way most people have been working on WAN link to this point. They'll create a low bitrate version, a 20-25 megabit copy, and they've been working fine. We have customers in Texas that have editors in New York and LA, and that works just fine for them. The FASTCache simply increases and smooths out that connection so that any dips in internet speed won't be noticeable to the end user and to the editor. So that is what I had. I hope you have some questions for me. Anything at all on what you heard? Shane, what do you got?
How much does it cost, Jim?
Oh, geez, a great question, Shane. Shane asked how much it costs. So we are a turnkey solutions provider. We are shared storage, as I mentioned, for post-production and content creation. We sell turnkey servers. Our servers are called hub servers, 8, 12, and 24 drive models, 32, 48, and we scale up, to very large, and we scale down to very cost-effective and affordable systems as well. The point of all that is that once you've bought the server, all of what I mentioned is included. There is no cost for Fast Tracker asset management. There is no cost for the FASTCache or the WAN link connectivity for unlimited users. We want to add value to our systems to make them more valuable for you as the customer, as the end user, and by doing that, we hope that you'll choose us over, other systems out there, because the storage is a very competitive market. So we want to make sure that we are there to satisfy your requirements. Anybody else have any questions?
NLE agnostic?
Yeah, and more importantly, Avid compatible, because we are Avid compatible, as Shane mentioned, with our emulation mode, bin and project sharing. That carries over to our WAN link connections as well, or through a VPN. Anyone outside the facility can now have full Avid bin sharing and media sharing capabilities on a remote access without a VPN. And something if you want to set that up, that's something that will work for you. In terms of other qualified Resolve, Adobe, Final Cut Pro, you name it. I mean, any other graphics and 3D application out there. It's really amazing how little the difference is between a WAN link connection and an on-prem connection. You really can't tell the difference. In fact, we've caught ourselves sometimes after we got the Reflect working on the router, where I was able to actually go to the internet and come back in to hit certain servers. I would come in with my system that just came back from a trade show. I'd plug it into the network, and it would still be going back up and down to the server, even instead of across the hall to the server. And I didn't know unless I could actually look at the IP address on the connected volume. So it is a very simple way to do this. It's a very sort of field-tested method to do this, and so we're proud to provide that. Anything else?
If you were working remotely
Sorry.
and you've cached and you have everything in your timeline,
Yeah.
say you did need to media manage, project manage that timeline to a drive
Mm-hmm.
locally and send it out,
Mm-hmm.
where does that data come from? Does it come from the cached media already?
So the question is, like, if I need to media manage a project that is maybe partially on cache and partially on the server, that kind of thing, where is it coming from? So you got to think about FASTCache as the application doesn't know it's there, the operating system doesn't know it's there. As far as they know, they're asking the server for this data on the mounted volume. We come in the middle of that and redirect those requests to cache if it's data that we already have cached. If we haven't cached it yet, it's going to go to the server and read that data, and by virtue of that, now that's cached too. So there's no difference at all between having a cache on and having a cache off in terms of how the application goes and gets the data. It's where the data in the end comes from is the only difference to have the cache on, and that of course speeds up that whole process. Now I've had situations where I've cached a whole timeline and gone to do an export. Well, the export now is going to fly even back to the server because I'm not reading and writing to the server and using up both ways. I'm just writing at that point because it's all coming off cache. And do a speed test is kind of fun as well, because you do an AJA or a Blackmagic speed test on the drive, and it'll write kind of slowly. You might get 20, 30 megasecond write, back to the facility over the internet, and then it'll do 2,000 megasecond reads, because it's all coming off a cache at that point. It's instant. So just think about it that way. The application, the OS, has no way of knowing that what you're doing is on cache. It's just our shared file system in the middle that does that.
You have a booth at the exhibit?
We do, yeah. We're right as soon as you walk in the front door. And come down, I'll have my laptop back up, and I'll show the timeline playing back off of a server that's 500 miles away, and it's not dropping frames on UHD. Yeah. Yep.
So we had this at PGCC, we had a conversation earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and this has like been my biggest thing, is like, why can't I work from home
Mm-hmm.
on this type of thing, and we just didn't know that we could do this now.
Yeah.
So it's still all included in what we
Yeah.
thought 4 years ago.
It is, and we realize, given where we are, security is a major issue here. Your secure VPNs that your IT departments have set up is totally compatible with this feature. It's just going to take longer to cache on access. The first time you hit the file, it's going to take a little bit longer to get it down into the cache because you're getting a little less speed through VPN than you would over WAN link. But we realize that you say port forward to an IT person and they just kind of walk away. And we get that, and we also know that not every place will be compatible with this based upon your security protocols in place. But the least of the access that you have to the system can still be a benefit when it comes to FASTCache, especially in the case where the workflows that our customers are starting to develop are, I have a laptop, it comes into the office, it docks into my monitors, and I work all day on that. Well, it's got an NVMe 2 terabyte cache in there. So as soon as I go home and I plug back into my VPN network, which is maybe 5 megabits, it doesn't matter because everything I've done all day long is real time, for me. And so just the little things I need to grab that are new are the only thing I'm going to have slow. Any other questions? FASTCache, WAN link, anything else with the Facilis product line? Otherwise, we can answer it for you right downstairs.
I'll ask one more.
Sure, yeah.
How does it manage the local cache storage?
Oh, sure. That's a good question. So the question is local cache storage. How is it managed? It's not last in, first out. I guess it's not first in, first out. FIFO, I guess you'd call it. It's going to be least accessed. So we know if that cache data has been accessed, and if it hasn't been accessed, we're going to toss it when new stuff comes in and needs to overwrite it. So we're going to take care of that automatically. In fact, if you make a small cache and you take a big file and you pre-cache it, you're going to find that the front of the file that was cached is now uncached and the back is cached. But if I play through the front a little bit more, the back is going to go away because that was the last thing that was accessed, back when. So it's a smart way to do it, and it's trying to stay true to the efficiency of the system, in that the partial file caching needs to be accurate to what you're actually doing and not just sort of surprise, this is not online, not fast for you anymore for some reason. And then we know the whole problem with flash caching on-prem servers, and we've known about that for a long time, which is why we never did flash caching on-prem servers, is because the algorithms that were used with a multi-client environment just weren't very conducive to workflow. This is a single client, right? So I think that if you have 10 users and you put a cache drive on every one, it's actually a much better method of flash caching than to have a server with a cache front end on flash. Because this is your personal cache it can't be overwritten by anybody else, and it's going to be fast when you need to be fast. So just think about that, you know, in architecting the future of your facility and just how caching can help you out there. Anybody else? Good. All right. I'll let you escape the heat and maybe get a Red Bull or something. It's always interesting to do these after lunch seminars. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you.